Hook kick and crescent kick. What's the difference? Hi everyone, I'm Silvana from SilvanaKicks, and welcome to today's kick series. We're going to be discussing the difference between your crescent kick and your hook kick today. I wanted to touch on these two kicks because these are the two kicks that I see mistaken for each other quite often. So I wanted to just shed some light on the key differences between the two kicks, and then we're also going to apply the kicks to a spin because that's where I see the most error. So let's get right into it. Okay, so for those of you who don't know the kicks, I'm just going to briefly go over them. So for a crescent kick, you want to maintain straight hips. So hip position is the key factor to making sure that you're throwing these kicks properly. So you keep straight hips for your crescent kick, and from here, we're gonna chamber, kick, chamber. Okay, so not really much happens to your hips. You might have a slight turn as you begin the first chamber. That's normal, but otherwise we aren't really turning our hips very much for a crescent kick. Okay? Versus when you're throwing your hook kick. When you're throwing your hook kick, I'm going to do this off of a side stance just to make it easier because you want your hips sideways. Similar to that of a side kick or a roundhouse kick, you want them sideways. Okay? So from here, we're going to do our chamber, kick, chamber and not switch from a sideways hip position. So from here, bring it across. Okay? Not much happens to your hips. You can bring it across slightly just to get a little bit more power in the actual kick. But other than that, we don't turn all the way up with our hips because then it'll turn into that crescent kick. So from here, keep it sideways and bring it across. Now, the biggest difference in the kicks is that hip position and also the fact that one has an arc and the other is supposed to come straight across. So when you're throwing your crescent kick, make sure that it comes up and across versus the hook kick that goes straight across. When you're practicing your kicks, make sure to do it from stationary positions first and make sure that you have the chamber and the kick all together before you throw it in spin position. So when you apply it to spins, I've decided to kind of touch on this as well because this is where I see the most error with these kicks. Because the hip position is harder to do for a crescent kick and most people end up just throwing hook kicks instead by accident and they don't even realize why. So we're gonna hop right into spins as well. So let's get started on that. Okay, so I prefer doing my spins off of a side stance or a fighting stance, so we're gonna be here, okay? We're gonna start by throwing the easier spin, which is your spin hook kick. So from here, all you're gonna need to do is spin, look at the target, always eyes on your target, and then from here, all you gotta really do is turn a little bit more and you'll have those sideways hips that we talked about before. So just a little bit more and see how my hips are already here. So that's where you wanna end up. So sideways hips and bring it across, okay? So again, we turn, look at our target, make sure your hips are where you need to. Make sure your hook kick goes straight across, up and across. Okay? Now, the more tricky kick is your spin crescent kick. So, don't get it confused with your hook kick. Make sure we want to end up having our hips facing forwards. So, when you're doing this spin, we spin. And now what makes it a little bit harder is the fact that our hips need to continue to spin. Our hips need to keep going. So we're gonna come up, turn, 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 and now you see where my hips are? Right here, okay? Now they're getting ready to throw that crescent kick. So it comes up, throw, land, okay? So again, we wanna come up and make sure our hips are forward and we arc that kick. So turn, continue to move those hips so you can arc that kick. Give it a shot and let me know how it goes. And that's it. So keep in mind we could break these kicks down even further, but I do have a Patreon page specifically dedicated to that. So my Patreon page is my library where I have tons of information on kicks and flexibility and strengthening drills specifically for kicks. So keep that in mind. I'll link it in the box below. If you have questions or you have a kick in mind that you would like me to break down, let me know. I love hearing from you guys and I love sharing content with you that you would genuinely use. Now, if you know someone who could use the difference between these two kicks, make sure to send this over to them, and I'll see you all next Friday. Bye, everybody. So when you get to the very last kick that you're sticking, I want you to make sure that you're hovering on top of what you're using and try not to be too close to it. So once you stick that last kick,